you are choosing the card and flipping it face up, I want to make it cost something. So I'm actually going to make a cost to choose. And I'm going to make it be 1 point. Okay, that's because I don't want you to be able to just, flip the card over, flip it back down, flip the card over, flip it back down, eventually memorize all the cards, and then flip them up and get all your matches. So it costs you a little bit. If you forget a card and you have to look at it again, it's going to cost you just a little bit, okay? Not as bad as mismatching, but it costs you a little. Question?
I think maybe break should be one line out, because otherwise it breaks.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Good call. See, now I rely on all of you to make sure I don't make mistakes like that. So yeah, absolutely. This break needs to be inside this if, because we only break out of this for when we find another card. Good call. And the last thing, of course, is I want to mark this card as chosen. And sorry for the gaps there. Okay. This card, whoops, not is chosen, chosen. This card is chosen after we've done all this thing. In any case, it's going to be chosen. It's going to be the new chosen card. Okay? It might also be matched, but it's also chosen. Okay? So that's it. Okay? That's the entire logic of my card matching game. It's pretty simple. It's kind of, in a way, ultra simplified. You can imagine much more complicated things, but I'm doing this on the fly here, and we only have an hour and 15 for lecture, so I've kept it kind of intentionally simple. But the main point I want you to understand from this logic is it has no UI in it, right? It's purely just dealing with the cards and setting them to be matched or not, whether they're chosen or not, depending on using the match colon method, which is also part of our model. There's no UI here. Okay, it's up to our controller to take this logic and turn it into UI. All right, so let's take a look at that. I'm going to go back to our storyboard here and make more space. Scroll this over a little, give it more space. Okay, so here's our controller, right, our simple controller, just as we left it off. And I need to use this logic in this thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a property to hold my card matching game. Okay? Now, one could argue, some people would call this model. I don't like that so much because sometimes a model will span multiple properties. Or they might call it game model. Okay? That's not so bad. I'm okay with that. I like game. I think it reads a little nicer in the code, but it's kind of a matter of personal preference. But in any case, I need to import my card matching game header file here to make this work. And I'm going to lazily instantiate it. I'm just going to say if the game is nil, in other words, just our object is freshly initialized, then I'm going to say game equals card matching game alloc, oops, game alloc, and then init. Okay, there's two inits there, the one inherited from NSObject, which we know is going to return nil, so I don't want that one, and init with card count. Okay, so I'm going to do that one, tab over here. How many cards are in this game? Well, there's 12, so I should type 12 here, right? Okay, no, that's like putting 102 in your homework solution, right? We might add more cards someday. We absolutely do not want 12 here, so I'm going to put 0 here for now, and I'll show you how we're going to figure out what this number is. And using deck, luckily I have self-create deck here. That's why I did that way. That's going to create my deck. Okay, then we'll return underbar game, and it's nice and lazily initialized. Okay. All right, so let's talk about this 0 right here. How are we going to find out how many cards there are? Well, it turns out it's possible to create an outlet to multiple things in your UI. Remember that we have this outlet right here, flips label, which was an outlet that went to this little flip count thing that we had down here. It was a single outlet, which, by the way, we can delete this single outlet, but it went to one object, a UI label. So let's get rid of that. And we don't need flip count either. We actually don't need deck either. There's lots of stuff we can get rid of now. In fact, we're going to redo this whole thing. Well, let's get rid of flip count. We'll get rid of that in a second. You can see our game's gotten significantly simpler now that the model is taking care of a lot of our stuff here, and it's going to get even simpler when we delete all this. But anyway, that was a single outlet. We can actually create an outlet to multiple things, and as you might imagine, that outlet will be an array. Okay, so how do we do that? Very simple. Exact same way. I'm holding down the control key. Okay, pick a card here. I'm going to hold down control and drag into my interface just like I do with any other outlet I'm trying to create. And when I let go, you can see that at the top here where it says connection, there's actually the choice of making an outlet collection. So that's an array of things. Okay, we could also make an action message here, be declaring it here, or an outlet to a single button. But here I'm going to do an outlet collection. When you do outlet collection, Xcode, not Objective-C, but Xcode wants to know what kind of objects are in there. That's purely for Xcode. I told you there's no way to know what's in an array in Objective-C, and the compiler can't know that. So this is purely for Xcode, and you're going to see how Xcode remembers this answer in a second. And here's the name. I'm going to call it card buttons. That's what these are. These are buttons that are holding all the cards. Notice it's not asking me strong or weak here. That's because this property has to be strong. Okay? And it has to be strong because while the view has a strong pointer to all these cards individually, the view does not have a strong pointer to this array. And if we did not make this strong, then this would be constantly being set to 0 because no one would have a strong pointer to it. Okay? So that's why this has to be strong, because it's an array. It's not a button. Now, this little stuff right here, compiler completely ignores this. It's very much like IB action. It's just some stuff that Xcode puts in there so that it knows that this particular property right here is an outlet collection. And you can see if I mouse over this, it shows me the one button that I've put in here. Now, I'd love to tell you we can just select all of these and control drag, but you can't. Okay? I've been asking for that feature for years, but they never give it to me. So I have to drag these one by one. It's kind of unfortunate, but at least, you know, I drag it to the thing that's already existing. And you notice as I get close, it highlights the thing that is appropriate. And again, it knows that because it knows this is an outlet collection of buttons. So that's why I can highlight this property. Okay, so I'm going to collect all of them here. And when you do this, you know, it's somewhat error prone. You might miss. So it's nice to go back here and check. And you can see all 12 buttons in here. Question?
Does the order matter?
Okay, great question. The question is, does the order matter? Or is the order determined? And the answer is no. This order, the order of the object in here is completely unknown to you, and you cannot depend on it. If you need the order, you're going to have to do this a different way. Outlet collections are fundamentally, the order is not known. Okay? So no matter what order I control, drag them, or whatever, that's not going to be the order in the array. Okay? Which was a good decision by Apple. It seems like, oh, it'd be cool, but it'd just be too hard for them to, if there were a lot of things in here, it'd be too hard to show and you could get confused. So you need to use something different mechanism, and you're going to learn many mechanisms later in this class that you could do this with. This is just a pretty simple one right here for fairly small numbers of things. So anyway, we got this connection to these things. So now we can do card count. Okay? We know the number of cards. We can just say self.cardButtons. That's this property right here. Right? Count. Okay? So this is the number of buttons that's in this array. Okay? So that was good. That worked out well for us. Okay? Now we also have a nice array of these buttons so that we can update them with what's happening in the model. Okay? So first though, let's talk about touching a card. When you touch on a card, what are we going to do? Well, we don't want to do any of this junk. Okay? So we're just going to get rid of all that. Okay? Because we're going to let the model handle it. So all we need to do to let the model handle this is to get the card that this button is associated with, because these buttons are all still sending this. If you look at this, see all 12 of them are sending this action. And the sender is still the actual button you touched on, not the array, but the actual button, because this is the target action thing right here. So we can still find out who's sending it. And in fact, we can even find out its index in this array by saying card index equals self.cardButtons index of object sender. Okay? So this is going to tell us where this sending button is in this array. Okay? So now that we know which card it is in the array, we can just tell our game, please choose the card at that index. Okay? And we're just going to tell our model, hey, choose that card. Now, one thing here, though, is choosing that card might change the state of the game. Okay? Okay, might cause some points or match some cards. A lot of things could change. So we're going to put a little update UI here. Okay, and this update UI method, which we're going to have to write, has got to keep our UI in sync with the model. And remember, that's one of the primary things a controller does. It syncs up the model with the UI. Okay, so let's go ahead and put a little thing here, update UI. Okay, so what do we need to do when we're updating this UI? It's actually pretty simple. We're just going to go through all the card buttons, okay, get that card button, simultaneously look into the model for that card, and make sure the card button is showing what should be on that card. So let's go for UI button, card button in our card buttons. Okay, so we're iterating through all these buttons. Card button is going to be the variable. Let's go ahead and get that card index again for the same thing. Self.cardButtons, index of object, the card button, that is our iteration variable. Everyone cool with what we're doing there? Right? So we're just figuring out which card it is. Then we're going to ask our model, give us the card at that index using card@index. Oops. Okay, so now we have the card button and the card. Awesome. Now we can make sure the card button reflects the card that goes along with it. Okay, so what do we need to set on the button? Well, let's see. We have to set the card button's title. Okay, so set title for state, UI control state, state normal. Okay, and we have to set the background image, right? Depending whether it's the Stanford logo or the blank background. Okay. Also, if the card is matched, I'm going to disable the button. Okay, because you've already matched this card, you can't click on it anyway, so I'm going to disable it because a disabled button looks a little different, and I want buttons that are matched to look different. Yeah.
For the 4, as you go through all the card buttons, does that go from 0 to n?
It does. So the question is, does a fast enumeration like this, when you do this for in thing, does that go from the 0 to the end? And the answer is it does. It does go in order.
You could theoretically just
You could. So the question is, do you not need this? You could just have another iteration variable, or you could use an iteration variable here, like for I equals 0 to the line. You could. I don't like to depend on that going from 0 to whatever, so that's why I use this here. It's a matter of style. Totally a matter of style. This is also kind of a little clearer because here I'm saying I want the card that goes with, the card button that goes with this thing. So, the last thing I'm going to say is the card button enabled equals the card is matched. Okay, so the button will only be enabled if the card is not matched. Okay, now of course I have these two things which I haven't provided. Right? I've just left them, we don't have that argument. And actually for both of those, I'm going to create little other methods here, helper methods. So I'm going to, for the title,